Okay, there's something going on with the Liberals and the NDP this week that is so important for you to know about because it's this trick that they want you to fall for on grocery prices and on inflation. So I want to break this down for you so that you understand what they're trying to do and so you can explain it to your friends and family, particularly if you're going out grocery shopping. So let's start with the problem. Grocery prices are out of control in Canada. They are out of control. They're outrageous. Like, even if you're trying to buy generic brands at like the lowest possible cost grocery store, you know that prices are out of control. So that's the problem. And over the last, year and more, people like me and others in the Conservative Party, we've been talking about the fact that this is due to what? Inflation. And why are we seeing massive inflation in Canada? Well, we know that the Liberal government under Justin Trudeau has spent massive amounts of money, massive amounts of debt, hasn't really been made your life better, but that has resulted, again, sort of simplifying things and changes to the Bank of Canada has responded with monetary policy that has caused inflation. That's one of many, many issues that the Liberals have done to that has resulted in the increase in grocery prices, including what? The carbon tax, right? So what happens when you put a price or a higher price on fuel than in other jurisdictions? Well, every step along the way of the manufacturing process of food, from growing it to milling grain, let's say, in the example of a loaf of bread, to transporting it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, shipping it around, you driving to get it. What happens to that? Well, the cost increases, right? So there are many things that the Liberals, many really bad policies that the Liberals have put in place over the years that have exacerbated and caused inflation, particularly on grocery prices. And because the NDP are in coalition with the Liberals on certain issues, they have been voting to support these. So it's also the NDP's problem, right? So many of you are wise to this. You know that these policies have caused inflation, and you've been demanding, along with us in the Conservative Party, changes to these policies so that we can bring inflation under control and make life more affordable for you. But here's where the trick that the Liberals and the NDP are trying to pull on you. This is what's happening. They don't want you talking about the fact that all of these things have led to higher grocery prices, right? They don't want to be at blame. They don't want you mad at them. They want you voting for them. They want you to ignore all of this and think it's someone else's fault. And that's what they're doing this week. Now, before I get into what they're doing, very briefly, I'm going to start by saying grocery chains in Canada don't necessarily have the best reputation. So I'm just going to start by saying this. I'm going to use Loblaws as an example. They had this headline a few years ago: Loblaws admits to bread price fixing scheme spanning more than 14 years. You remember that during the middle of the pandemic, when everybody was on lockdown, that they rescinded hero pay for their frontline workers. This was Loblaws. And then we found out later that they rescinded the pay for frontline workers and they gave big bonuses to their executives. And of course, Loblaws, you'll all remember this. It's an oldie but goodie. I can't believe it's only from 2019. That feels like a long time ago. You'll remember that they took millions of dollars of your tax dollars from Justin Trudeau to pay for retrofits to their fridges, even though they were making big time profits. So everything I'm about to say, I want to say, look, grocery stores, particularly the Loblaws chains, right? But what the Liberals and the NDP want to do is they want to deflect the blame from them and these policies and put it all on these big grocery chains. So this week, the NDP put forward a motion in the House of Commons. Jagmeet Singh went out and talked about greedflation. It's the grocery store's fault that it's inflation, it's greedflation. Now, look, again, I'm going to reiterate, particularly the Loblaws chain, not saints, for sure. But to say that it's just the grocery store's fault that the government, that we're seeing such high inflation in grocery prices in Canada is nobody believes that. Come on. In fact, the articles that I've seen talking about the NDP's motion which would look into so-called or alleged price gouging by some grocery chains in Canada. That I've seen some people talk about the fact, like just lay it out, like, look, like Canada has really high fuel costs right now. That's adding to inflation. They've been economists about talking about other issues. So like the Liberals and the NDP can't just try to trick you. Next time you're in a grocery store, next time you're in the Loblaws, what they want you to do is they want you to go, oh, big bad Loblaws, instead of saying, well, maybe it's also the federal government's policies as to why prices are so high. Now, here's the curious part, and I wrote an article about this today. I'm going to put the link in the video description, and I want you to read it. I also want you to share it with people as well, too. Here's the curious part of all of this. So the Liberals and NDP, they put this motion out to investigate alleged price gouging. Okay, like we actually supported the motion because it's like, well, if there is price gouging going on, we want to know. But how come Loblaws isn't pushing back on the fact that we know for a fact that things like fuel costs, things like the carbon tax, things like, other pressures on monetary or certain types of monetary policy has affected inflation in Canada. How come Loblaws isn't making that case? It's a little weird, right? Like, what's going on here? So I wrote an article about that, but I just want you to be aware of what's happening in Ottawa this week, where you've got the Liberals and the NDP, after years of economy destroying policies, including the carbon tax, including this massive accumulation of debt, which in turn you've seen the Bank of Canada respond with policies that have increased money supply and caused inflation, among other issues. Instead of taking ownership on those issues and saying, look, we have to address these structural issues that make grocery prices higher in the long term for Canadians, they're going, oh, it's the big bad grocery stores. So what I wanted to leave you with today and explain to you is that if you've got people after this week coming to you, or you're in the grocery store and you're like, oh, it's the grocery store's fault. Sure, let's have a probe. Let's see what's going on here. Like, let's find out. But we cannot let the Liberals and the NDP off the hook for all of their bad policies, because no amount of probes or anything is going to address all of these structural problems that make Canada uncompetitive in terms of other economies around the world, but also so vulnerable to inflation, right? The Liberals and the NDP, they don't want you to pay attention to this at all. They want you to solely blame the grocery stores because they don't have a plan to fix this, right? Our party, the Conservative Party, we've been putting forward concrete solutions and talking about ways to address this. The Liberals and the NDP, they're like, oh, I don't know what, and they also don't want to back off some of their really economy destroying policies, like carbon tax, like the increase in the carbon taxation, that they're about to increase it again next year. Like, what does that mean for grocery prices, right? It's much easier for them to have you making the grocery stores the bad guys instead of them. So this is going to play out. There's going to be this grocery store probe, all of this sort of stuff happening, but it's really up to you to continue to hold the Liberals and the NDP to account alongside of us by just not letting them off the hook on this. Canadians can't do that. Otherwise, we're never going to see a change in policy, which is what we're fighting for as Conservative members of Parliament in Ottawa here every day. So to help us out with that, to help people get the word out, please share this explaining video. Like, please share it so that people understand the politics of what's happening here, and also have a read in this article that I wrote for you. I kind of laid down some of the politics that happened, some of the lobbying that's been happening, kind of a behind the scenes look on this. So have a read for that, share this so that we can get the word out and we can continue to hold the Liberals and the NDP to account, because grocery prices are out of control. It's crazy. It's unaffordable. People cannot make ends meet. And that's what we are focused on trying to solve as the Conservative Party of Canada. Share this video. Working hard for you in Ottawa. Have a great day.